Thanks for joining us for another episode of Cannabis Tech Talks, brought to you by PolyScience and Summit Research. We're here live at MJBizCon. Well, live at the moment. We'll be airing the recording a little later. But I'm here with the wonderful and talented Geoff Trotter with Regennabis. We're going to talk about sustainability and everything that goes into that for the cannabis industry. So, Geoff, thanks for talking with us.
It was great to be here. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah. So let's give our audience a little bit of background. What kind of got you into the cannabis sector?
Patrick McCartan, my co-founder and partner at Regennabis, he and I had known each other for a good period of time, and we would check in with each other like once a month or so. He'd gone off to discover everything around the world of cannabis. I'd gone off to do some advisory work with the United Nations, and then in a kind of like two men and a baby kind of way, because he would bring his youngest. We would sit in this restaurant in somewhere in San Francisco, rocking the little kid in the car seat. And man, what are you doing these days? Cannabis, really? Tell me more. And he just would tell me more, and I realized, I said, you know, in the back of Prohibition and the Prohibition era, and the work that I'm doing around sustainable development, actually there's a fantastic intersection here.
It absolutely is.
I got a sense, the more I then started diving into what was going on in the cannabis space, that it struck me that you could sense that there was this opening up, this moving beyond the Prohibition era, slow but getting there, you can see it. That would this not then be a great opportunity to look at something around the lines of, you know, of the plant, by the plant, for the plant, and extending that into of the planet, by the planet, for the planet.
Yes.
Because we felt that there was just something missing. And Patrick and I had come from the world of sustainability. We'd worked with some great organizations, and we'd worked together for a period of time. And then it just hit us that actually, wouldn't there be an opportunity for us to drive industries through the resurgence of cannabis? So it's not just, so let's talk about renormalization. We'll come back to that in a moment, because prior to Prohibition, this was a widely used plant.
Oh yeah.
So it's not new in that sense. So we're looking to renormalize. But from our perspective, if we're to look at the opportunity around the plant, then it could drive other regenerative industries beyond regenerative agriculture.
Absolutely.
So that's when we kind of like got regenerative, cannabis, Regennabis, and that's how that came about.
I love that. And it truly was, for such a long period in history, relied on heavily, used as a renewable, affordable, resilient resource. And then this huge period where it fell out. We couldn't get any of the benefits.
Yep.
And so I'm thrilled that there's an organization, I'm sure many, but your organization is focusing on the renewable, regenerative, sustainable aspects of cannabis, because, and this is something that I've always liked about what you're doing, is bringing attention to the fact that it's not greenwashing. There isn't, there's this negative stigma that cannabis is really resource intensive to cultivate.
Sure.
But there are ways to do it sustainably, and there are ways to use it to do sustainable things.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, from our perspective, what we're looking at, and just as a little bit more about the work that we're doing, we're US based, but we're not US centric. We kind of look at this as a massive opportunity for humanity. I mean, that sounds a little trite, but you know, we fundamentally believe that if we get this right, we can uplift 7.8 billion lives. Actually, someone corrected me that it's actually now it's 8 billion.
Yes, just earlier this week, I think.
Trust me, the difference, they don't need any help. You know, like the 1% or the 2%, they don't really need any help.
Right.
But we cannot, I don't think it's almost like our imperative as humans. We cannot leave 7.8 billion people behind. And we do think that as we come out of this post-prohibition era, if we look at both, well, the recreational space around cannabis and then the medical space, but then let's also look at an even bigger opportunity, which is the industrial cannabis space, aka hemp. But then you're talking about the opportunity to create regenerative industries, and think of any industry that begins with the letter F. Food, fuel, fashion, fibers, fabrics, farming, pharma.
Right.
doesn't begin with an F, it sounds like it. And then ultimately finance, we can have regenerative industries, regenerative food, regenerative farming, regenerative finance, imagine. And we feel that we could do that both for the cannabis industry and then by the cannabis industry. So we're looking to create opportunities with no matter the vertical from a licensing perspective, but no matter where you sit in the cannabis industry, and no matter which sector you're in, recreational, medical, hemp, no matter, that frankly, there is an opportunity to look at where we can do things better from an environmental perspective, from a social perspective, and also just from a governance perspective, from a set of behaviors at a corporate level. And hence, the work that we're doing also is aligned very much then to ESG, environmental, social, governance factors. We believe that actually if we can help cannabis companies address their imperative to go beyond just seeking an economic impact, but to create a social impact as well as an environmental impact, then when the doors really do open, when it comes to investment, either on the back of the Safe Banking Act or the Climb Act, or just good old-fashioned federal legalization, and we have the finance world coming into this space more than they're already in this space, but we're talking about institutional investors. For sure, those institutional investors will be looking for evidence in cannabis companies of ESG at play. And so we're helping cannabis companies kind of like future-proof themselves for that eventuality. And it's a big part of what we're doing. And so it's worth just spending a bit of time looking beyond the sort of the greenwashing or the green rushing in this space.
Yeah.
Actually, you can create, massive profitability in this space and do good. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yes.
And that's
Say it louder.
Essentially what we're doing. They're not mutually exclusive.
I love that. And do you feel like ESG is going to become a more focused part of regulations going forward?
Yeah, it's for sure. If you look at what's going on here in the United States with Gary Gensler at the SEC, they're making pronouncements and announcements all the time in terms of, initially from an environmental perspective, looking at greenhouse gas emissions, etc., scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. Any company in not just cannabis companies, but any company in the United States is going to have to report out on their ESG performance.
Wow.
Cannabis companies are going to be no different. And of course, for sure, when you see cannabis companies, certainly those listed ones, as they uplist out of Canada into the United States, into NASDAQ or into the New York Stock Exchange, again, there will be an expectation around an ESG performance. And it's not that only Gensler and the SEC is saying this. The market is demanding it. Consumers are demanding it.
Yep.
Other businesses are demanding it. And, dare I say, other countries are demanding it. So if you think that you can exist in a vacuum in the United States, you have another big challenge coming if you're aspiring then to operate, for example, in Germany or in Europe generally, where your ESG performance is more than expected. It's now a legal requirement.
Right.
So we know that this is happening. We know for sure as eggs that this is coming.
And it's more than a moral imperative. There's policy change happening. There's, as you mentioned, a global growing demand that people in the most polluting countries take accountability for that.
Yep.
And I would love to say, I think many cannabis companies are thinking about it, but too often it becomes the finance, economic motive.
Yep.
But I loved your point that they're not mutually exclusive. These can happen at the same time, and it can make your company stronger and find better investment. And that's
Totally.
something that you talk about with the Regennabis live events.
Correct, yeah. So I think we're still the only private company that has actually managed to have a conversation at the UN around cannabis.
Yeah, huge. So United Nations Cannabis.
So we did this in May of this year. I was going to say last year. It seems like a long time ago. Like everything is a long time, or everything is like crazy in the world of cannabis. But it was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And we will go back again in 6 months' time. We're going to go back to the UN. We'll build out on those conversations. And what we are doing with these conversations, we're moving beyond the conversation. We're looking at action orientation. It's all well and good that we can talk, but what are the actions that are going to come out of this? And then as we go back, let's talk about what happened.
Yeah, what came out of this?
What hasn't worked? And one of the things that we do, and it's with intention, is, as the UN pointed out to us after the event, they said, you know what we really liked more than anything else was that you guys brought the market into the room. And by that, if you look at the 5 broad stakeholder groups in any market, you have corporations, you have finance, the investor world, you have governments, the regulators, you have civil society, the non-profit organizations that like check in and say, what about this and what about that? What about social impact? What about social equity? What about, and rightfully so, to keep everybody. And the 5th is the media companies. Yes. Because the media companies like your own are out there telling these stories that really need to be told. And so by bringing those 5 forces into the room to have these conversations, we're opening up beyond the discussion of what would happen if we have a fully legalized, renormalized, regulated cannabis industry. What that then does to create an economic impact, for sure.
Yes.
Capitalism lives, but actually multi-capitalism lives, because aside from an economic impact, we'll see a social impact as well as an environmental impact. And we're addressing then a whole bunch of environmental and social injustices that are happening, not only within the world of cannabis, but just period. That's why we're in such a mess right now. Yes. And ultimately what we're really helping more and more cannabis executives understand is that actually the more they embrace their authenticity, the more they embrace that it's not only about an economic upside, that they can deliver a social upside as well as an environmental upside. They get it, and actually they realize that not only does it bring access to capital, because again, those institutional investors will want evidence of an ESG performance. Yeah. But your social license to operate is then created because consumers increasingly want to buy products from those companies that they know are doing good.
Absolutely.
You don't even have to wait for the regulations around marketing and advertising in the cannabis space at a product level when you could be doing it at a corporate level.
Yes.
And demonstrate, because ultimately what's going to happen is when products in the cannabis space can be marketed, people are going to immediately associate product X with company Y, and they're going to lean more towards buying those particular products.
Yeah, and we're seeing it as well with employment, just finding work that you can retain, talent that you can retain. Yeah. It's about finding fulfillment in your career trajectory, yeah. Feeling that you work for a company that shares the same goals and ideals. Yeah. And that comes from ESG. Yeah. I think especially for the younger, the millennial generation.
Totally. I mean, we look at those 5 areas of why an organization, any industry should be embracing environmental social governance as a performance management mechanism, for want of a term. It's about mitigating risk. Yeah. It's about having access to capital. It's about having the license to operate. It's about securing consumers or clients if you're in the B2B space. But also the 5th one is exactly that. This is a growing industry, and there will be a war for talent, and talent increasingly only wants to work with organizations where they feel as if, aside from the paycheck, they actually feel like they want to be in this organization. They feel yes. as if they're part of something. And for sure, that's the other significant driver that we're addressing here.
And so another cool project you're working with is, you were telling me earlier about a new report that you worked with a company about resource efficiency?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So 6 months ago, yeah, we published a report with New Frontier Data. New Frontier Data, I love. Which was yes. ESG report, ESG in the cannabis space. Okay. Very well received report. So we co-authored that. We worked long and hard with the guys at New Frontier Data. And Patrick and I come from the sustainability world. I come from the information services world. So I always like this idea of content, not necessarily the pace that you guys put it out. It's frightening, the pace stuff that you're yes. putting out.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting, and frankly, it's exhausting to do every 6 months. But that's yes. that's part of what we're doing. We've just released a report this week that we co-authored with Hawthorne Gardening Company.
Okay.
Which was
and
looking,
they're huge in the industry.
I mean, huge. I think they're the biggest cannabis grower in America.
Yes. Oh, I mean, I don't know, but I know they're one of the biggest.
Yes, they are. So yeah, it didn't get any bigger than that. And what we're looking at is resource use efficiency, because they're a massively innovative organization, and we recognize that right from the get-go. When you look around, not just in the cannabis space, but in other spaces, if you look at innovative technology, which is one of your imprints, right? We know that this is happening. We're looking at those organizations that are front-footed. It's a cricketing term. Don't worry about it. It just, more assertive, owning the space.
Yeah.
They realize that there are different ways in which you can grow this plant, and rather than saying, oh, that's bad, that's good, it's like it could all be good if we look at some of the challenges around the energy intensity or the resource intensity, whether it's water or indeed energy.
Yeah.
So let's look at how we might be able to do something about that. Let's look at what other alternative forms of energy could we use in order to create the indoor grow space.
Yes.
What about water management? And they've got some crazy technologies. I mean, it's really quite something. So what we wanted to do was to create this report that says, let's look at the verticals in the cannabis space, cultivation right through to retail, but also add another, distribution, because at the end of the day, that's a big piece of what's going on in the cannabis space.
Big footprint.
We figured that there is opportunity around resource use, efficiency, right across all of that. But this first report was to look at the indoor grow space. And part of what we are intending with the report is to create a discussion piece that says, actually, we have a great opportunity here to start looking at water, looking at waste management, looking at energy use within that space to debunk some of the myths that were out there.
Okay.
And some of the things that people were saying. But recognizing that actually we really need to create a regulated space, we need standardization, and we need data, but we need verifiable, trustworthy data. And that's ultimately what this report is about. It's about creating that awareness that there are opportunities there. This is not the silver bullet. This is not the panacea to the challenges we have, but it's a discussion point that we can really get people going. And again, we bring the market to talk about this. Regulators, being the government, or the SEC as a body within the government, but also investors. Investors are increasingly looking at these opportunities, and that's a big part of what we're doing. So this report has just come out. It's a free download, and it's out there. You can find it on Hawthorne's website. It's
on the Hawthorne website.
Efficiency in the cannabis industry.
Where can people go to keep learning more about what you're doing? I know you've got a new SaaS platform you're coming out with. I'd love to talk about that more. Where can people go to keep up with you and find out more about this Regennabis information?
So Regennabis.com is our website. Regenabis. It's the first 5 of regeneration and the last 5 of cannabis. So Perfect. First 5, last 5, Regennabis.com.
Okay.
And you can just drop an email at Geoff, Geoff, and then Geoff at Regennabis.com or info@Regennabis.com, and one of my lovely teammates will pick up, and we monitor all of that all the time. So there's no excuse for not following what we're doing. Okay. Then we have regenerativeCannabisLive.com, which is the event at the UN. It's a separate website, more informative about the specific event and what we're doing in that space.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, I learned so much from our chat. I'm always happy to learn from you, Geoff. I love your insights. I'm looking forward to going to UN Live next year.
Yeah.
That's happening in May.
It is, May the 11th, back at the United Nations in New York City. Perfect. And next time we speak, we'll talk about our ESG platform, our SaaS platform, which we're in the process of getting out there as a solution for ESG reporting, measuring, and monitoring. That's coming. That's very exciting. There's just not enough hours in a day to have a conversation. In the same way, there's just not enough hours in a day for us to do the work that we're doing. We frankly should be moving to Mars, where we got like 50 hours in a day, and we might just get it done.
Maybe we can squeeze it in.
We might just get it done. We'll see.
Well, for Geoff with Regennabis and myself, Patricia Miller, This has been Cannabis Tech Talks. If you want to learn more about emerging technologies in the cannabis space, be sure to check out Cannabis and Tech Today. Follow Cannabis Tech Talks on all the major streaming platforms. And most importantly, thank you to our sponsors, Polyscience and Summit Research, for being here with us at MJBizCon. Join us for the next one. We've got them coming out all day today and tomorrow and throughout the week. So more exciting talks about sustainability. Thanks for joining us, and stay elevated.
Hey, hello, I'm Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. Wait, you didn't think people would know who I am? Durachill. This is Durachill. This is Durachill. This is Durachill. No, hey, I don't talk like that. You want me to sell this? Buy it. Try Durachill or else. If you want something really nice in your laboratory, buy Durachill. You can't go wrong.